She's coming.
Jason. In minutes instead of doing 60 folding chairs.
I'd like to call to order the Canton School Committee meeting of December 28th, 2012. I invite you, as is our custom, to stand and start by saluting the flag. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we start, I'd just like to take a moment of silence in memory of Roger Connor, former high school principal, who passed away this week. And we extend our condolences to his wife, Kathleen, his daughter, Eileen, sons Roger Jr. and Daniel. So if you would indulge for a moment. Thank you. Our agenda for tonight, any corrections, comments on it? I have actually no amendments to it tonight for amazing change.
I have something that will make it a little shorter.
Okay,
I'm proposing that we defer the discussion of superintendent's goals until Ms. Kelly is available next week. And for the same reason, I'm going to suggest that we defer both executive session items until next week.
okay. So that would be 6G and 12, the executive session. Is that fine with people?
I'd prefer not to put off the executive session, but I understand.
Are there items in particular in the first part of the executive session that are sort of time sensitive that maybe we should?
I can wait till next Wednesday night.
Okay. Then we will pull those two off the agenda. All right, so we will move on to citizen speak. We have a list. Is there one? Oh. Thank you. Right, first, Hugh Stringer. Please, sit here and just ask you, identify yourself and give you your address.
Yeah, my name is Hugh Stringer, and the microphone is a bit intimidating. I'm going to have to, I guess it's projecting my voice.
You're
you
fine.
Can hear me?
You're absolutely fine.
I reside at Elliott Street, and I've lived there for 40 years. My two daughters graduated from Milton High School, and it's because of them that I've come here to speak this evening. And some of the things I'm going to say, you already know, and you may have addressed them. I don't follow the minutes of the meeting very closely, but I read in the Milton Times for this past week that, well, there's an article here. It says the school's set to address the achievement gap. And it's that expression, achievement gap, it's a red flag for me. It put my heart racing, and that's the terminology that I would like to suggest that we eliminate, and I'd like to explain why. I view this terminology as racial profiling. My daughters, when they came here, would have been classified as language learning, LLA, language learning, whatever group. I think when you group people by language, the mother tongue, or by color, there's an expected outcome that's created. The teachers, the administration, the community at large, their neighbors, their friends. And when you say or imply that this group of people, whether it's language learning group or Afro-American group, when you imply that they're holding down the average MCAS scores of a town, my neighbors want, I know people that think their property values depend on MCAS scores. And to have a neighbor whose MCAS score is presumed to be too low lowers their own property value. That's an issue we're not going to address. But I don't like the racial profiling that I think is implied in saying that Afro-Americans have lower achievement or language learners have lower achievement. I think we should identify people by their achievement and their progress, and not by their racial or language or family structure, whether it's a single-family household or whatever. I think it would be absurd. My daughters tell me I use too many analogies, but if you had a science teacher in your school, you're the school committee, and this science teacher said to the students, well, on average, the girls like to go shopping, but they're not too good in science, then you don't like science, so we don't expect too much from you. And the boys, you're good in sports, you're maybe football, bash heads, but don't think that you'll get into the AP class. Most of the AP students are girls, We wouldn't want our children to go to a school that endorsed that kind of language. My granddaughters could be classified Afro-American, and I wouldn't want them to go to a school where it was known that Afro-American students don't achieve as highly as do the white students. If we must measure progress, use the standard exams that we have, the MCAS exams. We need to identify students who need help, whether it's MCAS or if you just ask a teacher in any classroom who needs help in their subject area, teachers could very quickly identify these students and as students and not as a racial group. And that's what I would like to see happen. I know you can't control what the press prints, and I know that maybe 1/16 Afro-American classifies as Afro-American. My granddaughters, and they would be in the group of low achievers, and the press would print that. But I feel that it behooves the superintendent and the school committee to stop using this terminology. And if the press wants to know who are the low achievers in our school system and why aren't they achieving, be able to provide them with numbers. 14 students in the third grade do not pass the MCAS exam. And we're taking these steps to try to bring them up to the third grade reading level, not identify them as male, female, or worse yet, racial categories. And thank you for listening to me. And again, I know you know more about expected outcomes and the deleterious effect that has when a teacher expects students not to achieve. And you've studied this more than I have, so I hope I'm not being I am being presumptuous. Well, I don't want to be presumptuous in telling you what you know better than I do. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I have Mike Mahalchuk.
Thank you, members of the school committee, administration, the Milton Public Schools, and thousands of people watching on Milton Cable. I noticed there was a 15-minute limit on the speeches, so I'm going to set aside my prepared remarks. And really, I just want to come here. I'm on a mission to get the word out about something. I'm representing the Milton Rotary Club, which is part of the world's largest and oldest service organization. We have started over 100 years ago, and our motto is service above self. What we're really trying to do is we're a group of people who think that there's more to life than making a buck. We're trying to make a difference for people in a positive way. And there are many ways to do this, but the one I wanted to focus on that's relevant to you is in the thing that we're all working for here, which is for the young people in the Milton Public Schools. Now, there's a couple of programs that Rotary's just come out with. It's a new thing called New Generations, and I need to get the word out better. So with the help of the superintendent, I've met with the PTO presidents, I met with the leaders of the Milton Public Schools, and now I'm meeting with the school committee to tell you about a couple of programs that we have that I want to get the word out and have kids apply for. The first thing is an international exchange program. We in Rotary have members all over the world, and 1.3 million of them. And we, all over the world, are people who are leaders in our community. And if we have a student who wants a real adventure, who wants to go overseas and live in a foreign country, become fluent in a foreign language, become very conversant in a foreign culture, we have a program for them. This year, I went through my normal paces to get the word out about this, and somehow I don't have any applicants yet. So the first thing I wanted to hand out to you was a little present. This is about that program, the exchange program. Just take one. You especially take one. And the second thing is for kids who don't want to travel abroad. Rotary is a group of people who are business and community leaders. And so we have a program in the spring that's called the Rotary Youth Leadership Awards program. And man, it was like pulling teeth last year trying to get people to apply to this. So I think that with the cooperation of the leadership of the schools, you know, my counterpart in Wakefield, Rhode Island, sent 23 kids to this leadership weekend. There's 150 kids there total. And I was like begging and pleading and extending deadlines, and I got one kid to go. So this thing is not until April 23rd, but it covers stuff like fundamentals of leadership and team building. It's great stuff. It's good to go on your resume if you're applying to college. And please take one. So really, that's it in a nutshell. I'm just trying to get the word about these programs, and I wondered, just as out of curiosity, if you were interested. I have more brochures to hand out. Would you like one?
Yeah.
Yes? Wonderful. I think I've succeeded. Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks,
Was that less than 15 minutes?
Can I just say one thing? So, Mike, if people wanted to contact you about this, people that are watching from
I'm the
home,
only Mahalchik in the phone book.
only Mahalchuk in the phone.
Or you can talk to, we have very normally, you have a membership in the Rotary, voluntarily nominated.
John Phelan, James Jett, and I are sharing the membership.
So we're going to be working together on getting the word out about these programs. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Also on my list, I have an unnamed representative from Citizens for Diverse Milton. I take it that means either several people are going to come up or you're going to draw straws.
I'm Cynthia Guys, and I live on Canton Avenue. And this is Chris Navin, and he lives on
Cliff Road.
Cliff Road.
Hi. Do I need to move a microphone? No, okay. Didn't really expect to, neither one of us expected to be speaking tonight, but someone else who had planned to be here representing Citizens for Diverse Milton, which is our organization, wasn't able to make it. So here we are. We'll give it our best shot. I want to say that I agree, and I think the members of CDM would agree with the spirit of Hugh Stringer's remarks. Everyone wants to be treated as an individual, not lumped as part of a group. And that's understandable, and every child deserves to be educated irrespective of any group he or she may belong to. But I'd like to try and reframe the issue just a bit. When we talk about the achievement gap, that is the gap between the average student performance and any subgroup, whether it's African American, special ed, boys, girls, any subgroup, that if there is a difference, that gap is a statement about how the school system is performing. It's not really a statement about the subgroup of people, because every public school system has a responsibility to educate all students of every subgroup to their maximum capability. So high achievement is expected for all subgroups. If a subgroup is not performing, then that's an indication to us as a society that has decided to watch out for these things. That's an indication to us that the system is breaking down somewhere, that the school system in that respect isn't reaching effectively that subgroup. So it's not so much a judgment about that group of individuals as it is like a warning light, an indicator, a dashboard light. There's trouble in your system, there's trouble in your oil pressure, there's trouble in your radiator, there's trouble in your school system when a subgroup isn't making the kind of progress that's expected, that AYP, annual yearly progress, that the state lays out for you. So that's what I wanted to say. I hope I made myself clear. Now Cynthia is going to speak more specifically to this situation.
CDM shares the concern that there is a large achievement gap. We are looking forward to hearing tonight the key steps to close this gap. And we wanted to thank Leroy Walker for requesting a clearly articulated strategy. And we were very happy to see this in the Milton Times, because I think a lot of people don't really know what's going on, and it's news to them, although we have been working with Mary and John for many years now concerning this. In the Milton Times, the last paragraph struck me in particular, and we at CDM do agree that the comparison of the black students should be with the students they are sharing the classroom with, not necessarily what the statistics are in other subgroups. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
All right. Is there anyone else for citizen speak? That's all that's on my list. All right, so we'll move on to approval of minutes. October 3rd, 2012. Any comments, corrections, additions, amendments?
I had one little itty-bitty one.
Okay.
Sorry. It's on to the third actual piece of paper. It says Chairman's Report at the top, and it's where it says discussion, the third paragraph down. It just said, the second to last sentence, Ms. Kelly said, if should not impact, it should be it should not impact.
It should, okay.
Sorry. So, make a motion to move those.
Ms. Padara?
Just under the citizen speak, I wasn't sure if that was right. I thought that was, it says James Sullivan. I thought that was James Mulligan, but I wasn't sure.
Mulligan.
It is, it's James Mulligan. So the last person on the second round, first person on the second round of citizen speak should be Mulligan, not Sullivan. Any other corrections? Hearing none, all those in favor of the minutes of October 3rd? It's unanimous. Yeah, that might not have been seconded. Who seconded it? Quickly. All right. Minutes of November 7th. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Seconded? Someone? Ms. Padara?
Oh.
All right. Any comments, corrections, additions on the minutes of November 7th? Oh, sorry, I went out of order, but that's all right. They're out of order in my pile.
Those are fine.
Hearing none. All those in favor? Opposed? You're abstaining? So that's 401. Ms. Begley Jones abstaining. And now correctly, the minutes of the October 16th. Sorry for confusing people.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Walker, second by Ms. Sheridan. Any comments, corrections on these? Yes,
I
sure.
don't have a correction, I just have a comment. This was a regular meeting of, obviously, of the school committee, but it was really a session where people could come, and although I so appreciate all the time that it took to write all these responses, I just didn't know if that was really, if that's a level of detail that we need going forward, if we're having, an extended citizen speak with that level of detail. So I just wanted to share those thoughts.
I mean, the closest thing to this has been budget hearings in the past, and even they have been rarely
This detail.
or have this many speakers.
Right.
That was sort of an unusual evening. I appreciate the work that went into them, but I think it does summarize the record nicely in some sense, so I'm fine with them. I don't think we'll have to have too many more of these, I hope.
The only concern would be is if somebody who's quoted here felt like they were misquoted, they're not able to say, but wait a minute, that's not what I said, which is fine, but that might be the, a reason to not say what they said, because they can't correct it.
But it's,
Go ahead.
citizen speak, it's the same thing. I've noticed the minutes, they list the person's name and kind of an overview of what they said. It's the same, isn't it?
Mhm.
But have we done that in the past as much? I don't know if we have.
This was, as I say, a fairly unusual meeting.
Yeah.
Any other comments? Seeing none, all those in favor of the minutes of October 16th, that's unanimous. Thank you. And we move on to the superintendent's report. Ms. Gormley.
Thank you, Chairman Pavlicek. I'd like to invite to join us at the table our own Milton Elementary School librarian, Lori Henry, and our pleasure to welcome Milton Public School Children's Librarian, Elaine Y. Shadell. Did I do a good job on that?
There's no public library.
Oh, Milton Public, I was concentrating so much on Elaine. So,
That's why I tell the kids to just call me Miss Elaine.
well, we have a strong partnership, in great credit to Lori Henry and Elaine, and the Milton Library has a new grant opportunity that you have to partner with a Milton Public Librarian, and we have a very exciting grant to tell the public about. That's, I call it a passport to a new world for Milton Public School children that will be life-changing.
It is very exciting, and the idea for this grant actually began as a result of Ms. Gormley's initiative to have every Milton Public School student receive a Milton Public Library card. And when we started this initiative, Elaine and I met and and discussed how best to supply these cards to all our students who don't have one. And as we talked, we decided, we talked about how we'd like to see the students use the cards after they received them. And of course, we wanted them to visit the library and take advantage of all the resources there. But we also wanted our students to be able to access a lot of the resources that are available online using their Milton Public Library card. And we wrote this grant to the Milton Public Library Foundation to ask if we could to partner together and teach the students, have a librarian from the Milton Public Library partner with me to teach the students how to use all of the databases and resources, and Elaine's going to explain a few of those now. But so we're really excited because the part-time children's librarian is going to spend time with each of our classes and work with us in our computer labs and with the smart boards, and the children will each have their cards and hopefully learn what they can access from home and from school and from remote locations. And Elaine's going to talk about the resources a bit.
Okay. For the last several years, we have been providing databases specifically aimed at children on the children's page of our library webpage. And getting the word out about that is something that we have been trying to do. And the results have been very slow in coming. So when we started talking about this, my assistant children's librarian, Sarah Trobe, said, I would love to talk to the kids about these databases. And I said, well, we ought to be able to do something. I did a few visits some years back at the Tucker School, particularly with some of the classes who were working on the annual project with the Trailside Museum, and I went in and showed them how to access some of the databases that we had at that time using their library card, how to place books on request so that they can get things from other libraries, a variety of the resources. And I said, so we ought to be able to do that with all of these newer things that we have. If you go to the Milton Library page at miltonlibrary.org and click on the children's room, you come up with a blog page, basically. Sarah updates it periodically with what's going on at the library, but there's also a nice row of colorful little buttons that run down the left-hand side of the page, and those are the links to take you to the variety of pages. We've, for several years now, have had World Book Online available. On the children's page, you can go to the main World Book Online with all of their resources, or you can click on the children's link. It's World Book for Kids. But in addition to that, there is also a French language encyclopedia, the children's encyclopedia that we get through World Book. There is even a Spanish one as well, but we really were excited to have the French one available because providing that for our French immersion students we thought was a good use of library resources. So we want to show them those items. We've added Muzzy online. Muzzy is a language learning system for children. They can click on the little Muzzy link. There's French, German, Italian, Spanish, Chinese, English, American, English, British, and I think there's one other, and they're adding a couple more. And they can use this to reinforce language things. I was very interested to see that the second largest group of hits that our Muzzy site is getting are English. The English that's on there is an ESL, And I'm actually wondering if we might not be picking up a few parents even who are using this as an easy way to help. We have just recently added something called BookFlix and TrueFlix, which are essentially ebooks. The TrueFlix consist primarily of children's press true books. Some of you may remember these little kind of square nonfiction, the true book of this, the true book of that. They're all available. They can read them online. There are follow-up games and activities that go along with them that they can access. All this is accessible from home. They don't have to come to the library, but they do need the library card to get into it. So Sarah is going to be talking about all of these various databases. She's also going to be talking about some of the other resources at the library and also talking to them a little bit about the kinds of programming that we have available. So we're really hoping to particularly focusing on these databases, but also reminding them that there's a lot of other things that they can get with their library card. So that's what we're looking forward to. We're putting it all together now. We're hoping to start, well, we're planning to start the visits after the new year. And Sarah will be going out and meeting with Lori in the different schools, and we're excited about it.
And how many library cards are you processing?
I've delivered over 400 applications and I want to personally thank Elaine and her staff for processing all of those for us. So, and I think I even have a few more, Elaine, but there's been such a great response.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, go ahead.
How many kids do you think in Milton of our students don't have library cards? I guess I'm sort of surprised.
We have, close to 2,000 students, and so we sent home an application with 2,000 students, and we've had about 400 responses. So about 20%.
Good to know.
Yeah, it's exciting.
And then once they begin to access these databases with their library cards at home and in school and talk about it, perhaps the balance of the elementary school children who don't have library cards will then fill out applications.
Absolutely.
So we're working towards 100%.
100%. Yes.
Ms. Sugar.
I think in this day and age when you see bookstores going out of business and, people tending to look online for references and books as well, I think it's really important for children to learn the value of the library as well as all the resources that you're certainly sharing with them. And encouraging them to get library cards at a young age is really exciting. It's great work. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Lifelong learners.
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
Anything else from the committee?
Thank you very, very much for coming tonight and
Thank
for
you.
partnering on this grant.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next, I'd like to invite very exciting news. Milton's two co-chairs, the Milton Foundation for Education's this year's Celebration for Education, Anna Christina Kenny and Ann Gatnick. Won't you join us at the table? So these two parents have agreed to co-chair this year's celebration, and they have hit the ground running with very exciting plans. So they're speaking to audiences, and we said, what better audience than the school committee and the viewing public? So congratulations and thank you.
Thank you. We're the lucky ones. We've been having a lot of fun already working on the event. This year's event is taking place on March 9th, and it's again at the Quincy Marriott. And our theme this year is Livewire, and Livewire is a technology theme. So we're working now on all of the decor and the look and the feel of the event, but it's going to be really fun and exciting. Lots of high-tech surprises and energy, lights and sound and action, and so it's been a lot of fun working on it. And all of the money that we raise at this year's event will go towards technology across all curriculums in the 6 Milton Public Schools. So as we go along with the event, over the next few months, we'll be unveiling more about what we're planning on doing with that money. And, but our overall goal is just to provide more opportunities for our students by connecting them with each other and with the outside world. So it's been really exciting and fun to work on this. So we're hoping that we'll have the support of the community. We already have met with Mary Gormley and her team, and everyone has been really supportive and helpful. And so just thank you to everyone.
Yeah, we're so excited about the event, and we're especially excited about this year's raffle, which will be for the 2013 Wrangler Sport from Planet Chrysler Jeep, and they're only selling 500 tickets for $100 a piece, but it really increases your chances of winning this awesome prize. So
And they're on sale now.
they're on sale now.
So you'll be seeing the Jeep around town, so we're encouraging people to buy them for holiday gifts. They're great stocking stuffers for people who have teenagers in their homes. So they've been selling very well, and there are only 500 being sold, so.
It's exciting.
Yeah.
And the winner will be drawn at the event, at the Celebration for Education event.
So, so right now we're working on our sponsorship, live auction, silent auction. So we're open to any suggestions from any of you. If you have any ideas of things that you think we might be interested in pursuing, then we'll make sure you all have our contact information and can get in touch with us. So I think that's everything.
Can I make a
Go
comment?
ahead.
I have to make a comment. How old are your children?
I have a 12-year-old who's at Pierce and a 3rd grader who's 8 at the Glover School.
And I have a 13-year-old in 8th grade, an 11-year-old in 6th, and a 2nd grader, 7 years old.
So tell them to get used to the fact that they'll have cereal for dinner for many months. One of the greatest joys in my life was co-chairing the auction many, many years ago, and my kids still remember, oh yeah, those were the 6 months we ate cereal every night for dinner.
Yeah.
So what, you know? So thank you. I really mean that from the bottom of my heart. It's an incredible
Yeah.
sacrifice, and it's a wonderful thing, and we all love
Yeah.
the Milton Foundation and what you do for us. So it's a wonderful thing. So thank you.
It's sort of a special honor for me as well, as I am a graduate of Tucker School, Pierce School, and Milton High School. So this was really good.
That's fabulous.
Mr. Walker.
Yeah, but I'm still having a great time.
We really appreciate what you do.
Thank you.
The community owes you a real debt of gratitude, and this event is a fabulous event every year. The focus on technology, the timing couldn't be better. As you know, that we're making some requests to the town to fund
Give that to her.
some capital projects, and the operating budget is struggling to fund some of the technology needs, so the timing couldn't be better. And I'm looking forward to the auction. Last year, I was the high bidder on the trip to Tuscany, so who knows this year.
We promise to have some really great items.
Yeah.
Oh, yep.
And will you tell the story about the kickoff on the night of the hurricane? You tell the
yeah.
story, but I love how you
We-
thought you'd be alone, and
We had our kickoff for volunteers just to generate some excitement around the event, and we had all of our clipboards with our committees all ready to go, and of course, it was the night of the nor'easter. We thought we were really smart hosting the event at Steel and Rye because there's been so much excitement around the opening of the restaurant, and Anna and I had a conversation before about how if nobody shows up, or even if just 5 people show up, we have to just act like it's great and be really excited and just suck it up and deal with it and then move on to Plan B. And we had expected about 40 or 50 people to attend, and people just kept rolling in. We had about 70 people there. And I said it was like my George Bailey moment, where people were coming in with the snow on them and wet and wind blowing in, and people just kept rolling in, and so people were really, really excited. to be a part of this. And so it's made it a lot easier for Anna and I to get excited about it and feel good about what we're doing, and the time that we're, phoning in our takeout delivery and all that, it definitely makes it worthwhile, so.
And we keep teasing each other with the whole theme of the live wire that we are supercharged about the event. And we are actually especially charged about this year's honorees, that we're going to be honoring Ken Quigley, the president of Curry College, and John Cronin, who's a huge Milton advocate, and his wife, Marita Cronin, who's a townwide supporter. So we're really excited about these honorees this year.
Marita is actually, it's fun because we just assume that John and Marita, and I think a lot of people assume that they're high school sweethearts, and Marita actually is not a Milton High School graduate, and so we are making her an honorary graduate of Milton High School at the event, so they can be high school sweethearts at last, so.
Becky.
I just wanted to thank you, but also ask a little bit more about this raffle, because I know the tickets are going fast. Where can people purchase them? I hear that they're going to be
Would you
at
like to purchase
different-
one tonight? Because I have a
There-
card swiper, because we're high-tech, I have a card swiper in my bag, so.
But people at home might want to know, like, there's some I think there's some events coming up that, and also, you don't have to get a Jeep, right? If you
No,
wanted to.
thank you for
That's-
pointing that
yes,
out. We can also offer people the cash buyout for the Jeep. So if someone, for whatever reason, does not want the Jeep, they can take the $18,000 cash option instead. So it's someone we know is going to win this Jeep or have this big pocket full of cash after March 9th. So it's, but we'll be selling them. We'll be publishing a whole list of places where we'll be selling the raffle tickets.
But information right now can be found at the Milton Foundation for Education.org.
Yep. And I should point out that one of the things that we're working on is boosting up our Facebook fan page. So there's a Milton Foundation for Education page on Facebook. And so we really want people to go online, and if you're on Facebook, just like the page, and then you'll be getting more updates as we go along. And will encourage us to provide more updates if we see that we're getting out to people that way. So if you're not on Facebook, sign up and like us, yeah.
And you brought the Jeep to conference night at the high school. That attracted a lot of attention from the high schoolers.
They did very well. I think there were a lot of kids nagging their parents after that, and and they'll be in all different colors. So we had one of the Jeeps at the Monster Dash in orange, and I'd like to get one out with skis in it and bright red around the holidays, and so
I know
we'll
tickets
be all
will
over.
be sold definitely at the chorus concerts, the upcoming chorus concerts in the next couple of weeks.
And we can facilitate working with you through the superintendent's office if anyone finds it difficult to find a location.
Right.
Thank you.
Great.
Great.
Thank you.
Mr. Walker, Heather?
So you're Ann and you're Anna Christina?
That's correct.
Yes.
And is your husband Rob?
Yes. Yeah, he said I'd be seeing you
So
tonight.
let
Yeah.
me just say a word about the Gatniks.
And, uh-oh.
Ann's taken on this role that, as Kristen said, is all-consuming for the next few months. Her husband, Rob, has been serving on the Town Government Study Committee since it started. And if you're reading the Milton Times, suddenly there's all this activity about perhaps increased pilot payments. And everybody's interested now, but the two guys who actually got that ball rolling and did all the legwork were Rob Gatnick and Mike Joyce. They went and talked to the city councilor who chaired the Boston program, which was wildly successful. They prepared the proposal that we subsequently made to the selectmen, who now are interested, and the assessors interested, and everyone else is interested. But these are the two guys who got it rolling, so
Thank you.
thanks to
He'll
the town.
appreciate that.
Thanks
Thank
to
you.
the Gatnicks, and that's what makes this town so great.
Thank you.
Ms. Sheridan?
I was just going to say something when you were talking about the awardees, and I know President Quigley is an alum of Milton High School, but his wife is also although she's not an honorary, but she's also an alum of Milton.
Oh, okay, that's good to know. We're actually meeting him tomorrow morning, so we're really looking forward to getting together with him. So,
Good job in picking those. That's great.
thank you.
On behalf of the school system, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
No,
Briefly, we also should, in absence, give a huge round of applause to our Milton High School football team, who beat Braintree on Thanksgiving Day, 24-7. First winning season, first winning season in 11 years, and their best winning season. And they finished the season with 5 straight wins. Tuesday, December 4th, we have a school committee meeting next week, but on Tuesday, December 4th, PS Information Night at the PS Milton High School, PS Middle School Auditorium at 5:30. Wednesday night, we have a school committee meeting. Also that night, in the Milton High School Auditorium is a Milton High School Financial Aid Night for parents. We try to work against those conflicts, but that will be a conflict that night. Friday, December 7th, Pierce Shopping Night for the holidays, 6 to 9 at the Pierce Middle School. And December 8th, at 10 in the morning, we sent an invitation to the school committee. We're going to, driven by David Taher and the group that has donated, we're going to have a small reception at 10 o'clock at the beautiful granite stones at the top of Guile Road and at the both entrances of Milton High School. David Taher, John Phelan, and Terry Driscoll really drove that project and made that happen, and those granite stones will be there forever. So we're going to have a small reception, a school breakfast, I'm calling it, a little entertainment, and to recognize the donors. And if I might, for one moment, David and Rita Taher, the Leveroni family donated, Vivian Portner, in the memory of a classmate, Francis Courtney from the class of 1956, Mr. Musto, Terry Driscoll, Marcia McCormick in the memory of a classmate, Laura Kessler in honor of her daughter Katie, a 2012 graduate of Milton High School, Jean McCauley, class of 1943, Ken Shaw in the memory of his wife, Robert Elwell, class of 1956, and Mrs. Priscilla Kopp Elwell, class of 1955, made donations that covered the funding for those 2 entrance and exit granite pieces. And so if the public would like to join us on December 8th, 10 o'clock, right here in the Milton High School lobby.
That's great.
Thank you.
So we'll move on to my report. First item is the approval of the revised school calendar. The school calendar that you got in the mail now reflects the Milton High School half-days that we approved for the planning time as a result of the NEAS visit and the like. So I would accept a motion to approve the revised school system schedule.
So moved.
Second.
Yes.
I just have a question. I know, Ms. Gormley, there was discussion around whether or not that Hurricane Day was going to count against the districts. Is that,
Yes, 180 days.
right, so the date that's currently here will be,
But then we could have additional days.
Right.
So we put in those 5 extra days. Do you see the make-up snow days till the 24th? So
Right.
you're right away, the
we already
last day
know
has
it.
changed.
We already know the last day is the 19th, so maybe we could change that on this.
Absolutely.
It's public.
18th. This says the last day is the 17th, so we've added one.
Last day of school, half-day for students is the 18th?
That's what I have, the 18th.
Yours is different than mine.
Whoops.
Uh-oh.
That's interesting.
That's so funny.
Okay.
So we'll,
The note I have here says that as a result of the hurricane, the last day is Tuesday, the 18th.
They already put.
So she
theirs.
already.
So it's already
It must be
added.
already
Made the
updated on
change.
yours.
oh, okay,
Mine is a couple days older, I guess.
okay.
All
So
right.
it's just good for people to know that that's the date now after the, okay. Thank you.
All right.
Can I ask a question?
Anything else? Yes.
On the half-days, and I know that we've been very public about it, but Mary, I know
many parents are going to forget, so if at every opportunity, you could just say the exact same thing over and over and over again, and the same thing will go for me. I'll wake up that day and go, what, you have a half day today? So just the more we can say it repeatedly, because it is a big change for people to get used to.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Yes, Ms. Padera.
Do we have a regular schedule for half-days? It's always the same, or is it different? Because a lot of times they say a half-day, and I don't think people are always clear on the time.
We'll fully publicize that.
So, because I think it's always the same,
It
isn't
is.
Okay, so if we just put it out there once, then people
Yeah,
know.
it's the first Wednesday of the month except from January. For the
No, I
first
mean,
one.
the schedule for a half-day, like the
Oh,
time.
the schedule, time schedule.
Dismissal time, thank
Yeah.
you.
Anything else? Hearing none, all those in favor of the revised school calendar? Opposed, abstained, your favor. All right, it's unanimous.
I'm in.
The RFQ update on the request for qualifications on school attorney. Mr. Walker.
So we were able to meet this week and start to go through the mountain of applications. We got 13 responses from law firms. So the next step will be to decide, based on a closer review of the documents. What we did on Monday, Tuesday, was simply determine whether they met the minimal response requirements. And from there, we will decide the number of firms that the screening committee decides to interview, and then we will present 2 to 3 firms to the full committee for interview, along with the packages that they submitted.
Any questions from Mr. Walker? Yes, go ahead.
Do we see all 13? Did you say 13?
Well, you could, but if
No,
everyone...
I don't mean people-wise, I mean their resumes or their packets.
You could, but the more of us, so we have 3, one more would make a quorum, which would make it a school committee meeting, so we've got to be careful of that. But our thought was we would try to narrow the field and then present the best 3 to the full committee for interview.
Okay.
And the committee includes Mary
Yep.
as the primary client, so it's Mary, Linda Lee, and myself.
Okay, great.
All right. Second item on the MASC, MASS conference, an update from our representative, Ms. Padera.
Our legislative representative.
Lunch was delicious. So the resolutions all passed. There was some discussion on, especially the last item, which was the resolution we received late, and that was, most of the discussion was around, we received it late, so we don't want to vote on it, that kind of thing, but it eventually did pass. There was some discussion on the healthcare resolution, and I did bring up committee members, Kristen Bagley-Jones's remark about mental health being included, and the response I got from the Brooklyn School Committee is the one who initiated that, and they said they weren't sure if that would be included. That was their hope, but they couldn't really control how they would proceed, so that was also passed. Other than that, much of the information was somewhat about that I attended, somewhat about adequacy in budget funding schools, which is something we deal with a lot. So Superintendent Gormley, I passed on information to her for all of you in your yellow folders on budget, and Mass Budget did a report on how schools fund their budgets and how, even though they're fully funding their budgets, the costs of healthcare costs and the costs of special education programs have exceeded the costs they've been in the past. So they're having trouble funding their regular education teachers as well. So, and the discrepancy in that with lower income schools is greater. So it was pretty interesting. There's that information. There's also a website in there for looking up your school and seeing how we compare. There's also a talk on teaching civics and citizenship in schools, which I had the pleasure to talk to Superintendent Gormley about what we do in that. And I was actually very surprised and excited about some of the things we do, which one of the things, and I'm sure Superintendent Gormley can talk about it a little bit, is our future problem solvers, which I had the pleasure of witnessing today when I toured the Collycott School. And they just did a project on limiting disease spreads with ticks with the Blue Hills. I don't know if you want to talk about that a little bit, just an example.
We have in the Milton Public Schools, in the elementary school, a future problem-solving program. That's a national program. And we've had one of your own school committee member, Bern Lovely's son, went to the nationals in Michigan competing. So at each of our elementary schools, all of the fourth graders are trained in the process. Looking at a problem, researching the problem, coming up with solutions, coming up with criteria to evaluate which solution to implement, then implementing the solution. And so the organization provides problems, an underwater community in the next 20 years, what it might look like, survival. So an offshoot of that program, and it's very popular in the Canton Public Schools, is community problem solving. And so you give students a problem, and they go through this process and research to the point that I've seen press across the state where groups of students have taken on traffic issues. I would like them to take that traffic issue on at Brush Hill Road in Milton Street. But the problem they decided to take on last year was the deer population with the Lyme disease and the ticks in the Blue Hills. And the Friends of the Blue Hills were so appreciative. They said that, similar to the library, they couldn't have gotten the word out to so many families. And the work that the students did, the posters they created, and I suggested that they take on a new community service program this year, and the elementary school teachers who work with the students said, no, we're attached to the Friends of the Blue Hills now. We have a new group of fourth graders. And so in the area of civics, they're looking at problems within the community, and they might take on a problem at each school and then go as far as the school committee or the selectmen to share what their solutions are to some of our community issues. Could be the pilot issue. They could help research, again, and they become educated, and they're becoming a literate citizenry.
Which is great, which is a lot of what we were talking about at the conference in terms of not just having students, plan their school dances, but, really identify problems within their community that they're interested in, teaching them about searching out who their allies are, how has the problem already been tried to be solved, and what are new solutions they could come up with, and who would work with them to help them with that. So I thought it was a really exciting idea, and I was excited that we were already doing a lot of that, even at a younger age. We talked a little bit about, Superintendent Gormley and I talked a little bit about the government level at the Pearson Middle School and how we can do more there, and also maybe even starting a lecture series with other local schools and really getting kids even more excited about learning civics and citizenship in schools. So it was a very interesting topic for me. So that pretty much, and just one other topic we talked about, and I passed it on to Superintendent Gormley, is identifying students of low income, a different way that other schools were doing it. There's a website, a federal website, I think, Virtual Gateway, and you can go in there and become a member of it. And it makes it easier for people to self-identify for needing services, and then we can also identify them through that website. So I passed that along.
Anything from Ms. Madera?
Thank you.
Thank you. Next item is the annual report. Rather than printed out, you received in the email a 20-some page draft of the annual report that goes into the town report at the end of the year. I invite you to read through it. If you have corrections, additions, or anything like that, bring them back to Charlene, and we will incorporate them, but rather than print them out here. They were just sent to you via email. And next we move to the superintendent's evaluation from last year. At our last meeting, we went around the table, gave our comments on our individual evaluations. I wrote up Ms. Bagley Jones gave me written comments since she wasn't here. I wrote up an amalgamation of those. I've got the latest draft of it this morning with some corrections and so forth. If you didn't bring one, I have a few copies. I don't know if people did or not. For the benefit of people at home, let me just embarrass the superintendent by reading it. So people at least know what we're talking about. The recommendation goes as follows. At its regular meeting of November 7th, 2012, the members of the Milton School Committee orally presented their evaluations of Superintendent Mary Gormley for the 2011-2012 academic year. Per the school committee's practice, this document serves as a summary of those evaluations and is presented for formal adoption by the school committee. The superintendent had previously outlined and the school committee had previously approved 3 major goals for the 2011-2012 year. Goal 1, continue to increase student achievement. There were many commendable achievements. Our rating by the DESE as a level 1 district, the increase in students taking AP exams, the increase in scores on AP exams, 100% participation in PSAT and SAT exams, a successful reaccreditation by NEASC, MCAS results, and commendations. The superintendent's leadership skills were strongly commended. She takes the lead role in providing strong professional development for the staff, always aimed at increasing student achievement. She provides encouragement for the staff and constantly reinforces their successful performance. She has a strong leadership team which, despite many new members, actively participates in the decision-making for the district. Most importantly, Superintendent Gormley leads by example and models the behavior that sets the tone for the district. She's open to hearing from all Milton residents regarding any concerns they have about the school district and is committed to setting the bar high for all students. She works closely with local charities such as the Copeland Foundation and the Milton Foundation for Education to obtain funds to support academic interventions. She also meets on a monthly basis with Citizens for a Diverse Milton to obtain their input on issues related to the achievement gap. It was noted that future goals should include plans to continue to address the achievement gap and NEASC concerns. Goal 2, build an advocate for the Milton Public Schools budget. The superintendent's handling of the budget process was similarly commended. The involvement of the leadership team was evident. Her communications with interested parties, including staff, parents, PTOs, school site councils, the Milton Foundation for Education, was uniformly praised. In spite of the fact that the school department was asked to provide scenarios that, had it been necessary to implement them, would have negatively affected everyone in the district, there were no complaints that the administration was being less than fully open about the consequences. Her commitment to providing a solid educational experience while working within the confines of the town's budget is laudable. Goal 3, strengthen the image of the Milton Public Schools. It was noted that the superintendent is well regarded by town officials and other town department heads. Her good working relation with them is evidenced by the progress made in consolidating the town's financial software, the choosing of our facilities director to be the town's new director of consolidated facilities, her joint work with the director of public works and the town administrator on weather-related issues, her close working relationship with the chief of police on security matters, as well as her partnerships with the public library, the council on aging, and other boards on matters of common interest. In addition to the building excellent working relationships with town and school employees and Milton residents, the superintendent has outstanding communication skills. Her communication with the town citizens, whether through her blog or the local press, had a great deal to do with the relatively uneventful adoption of the school department budget for the 2012-2013 year by town meeting. It was noted the superintendent is highly respected around Milton. Feedback from the larger community consistently expresses residents' appreciation of the superintendent's willingness to participate in open dialogue, as well as to attend numerous town and school events. She maintains an open door policy for all residents and is committed to transparent communication about all school-related matters. In summary, the Milton School Committee commends Superintendent Mary Gormley for her performance in 2011-2012. She is a tireless advocate for the children of Milton, a strong educational leader, and has high expectations both of her staff and herself. The superintendent works hard to promote the school system with all constituencies in town and is seen as a respected and admired member of the community. And it was submitted over my signature. That is what I'm putting forward for formal adoption by the committee.
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Bagley
Second.
Jones, seconded by Ms. Sheridan. Any comments?
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Walker? Yes.
I provided a section that captured some of the comments that I made. Can you read that?
Yes. This, Mr. Walker suggested an additional section for, listed as areas for improvement. I wanted to bring that to the school committee because that hasn't been the way we've normally done these in the past. Not that we can't, but I didn't want to deviate from our policy without bringing it to the committee. So Mr. Walker suggested the following language to be inserted prior to the summary, called areas for improvement. The superintendent is encouraged to work on improved performance in 2 areas, execution and follow-through. Execution was lacking on the development and articulation of plans to address NEAS recommendations and the achievement gap presented by African American students as represented on MCAS scores. These plans were discussed and requested in early 2012, but were not delivered during the evaluation period, which ended in June 2012. With regard to follow-through, the superintendent is encouraged to develop a tracking system that will allow her to better keep track of the various ideas advanced by school committee members, to report back on the disposition of those ideas and the action items, and action items, and to seek the committee's guidance in prioritizing her time and resources where necessary. So Mr. Walker suggests that as, I also emailed that out to you earlier today, as an addition to the evaluation. So I would take that as a motion to amend.
Yes, but let me say a little more about that. I think what we're trying to accomplish, or at least the way we have been operating in this difficult public evaluation process that we have, is to make sure that the evaluation reflects the perspectives of each committee member. So I think the challenge here, if that particular language you think needs some revision, I'm happy to have that discussion, but somehow or other, I need to be sure that the final evaluation reflects the perspectives that I have as well. It doesn't really matter whether you agree with them or not. I'm saying that my experience this year has been this, although I didn't really want to have a lengthy conversation because my approach was just, anytime you evaluate an executive at this level, there has to be a discussion about things you did well, where you can improve, and where you can develop. Unless someone thinks that the superintendent did a perfect job, and I don't think anybody's making that argument, I think each of us has a responsibility to say, here's what you did well, here's where you can improve, here's where we see development opportunities. If you choose not to take that opportunity, okay, but I think that we owe it to the superintendent as her board of directors to exercise that responsibility and help her continue to grow as a professional. So my suggestion is either that we incorporate that language, or that we defer this vote until we can come up with an evaluation content that we're all comfortable with, one or the other.
Comments from other members of the committee?
Well, I am not, I am very appreciative of all the thoughts that are here and on both sides, but I would vote to support what you have presented, Mr. Pavlicek. I tend to disagree with some of the ideas that you have, but as you've stated, that's your opinion and your contribution to this. So I think I would recommend that we table this and until the time that we can come up. I mean, our goal here tonight is really to present, or at some point in time, is to present a formal evaluation of the superintendent. It's not to, we've done our public portion of it. We've, had some time to look at this. Mr. Pavlicek has worked on gathering all this, putting all our information and our thoughts and our comments together. And I think it would just be better served to, take this back to Mr. Pavlicek, see what you can do. Obviously, we can't discuss it offline, so I'm not really sure what the next step would be here, but.
Ms. Padera?
Yeah, I think both of you stated well, is that I think the problem I have with it is at the end there in terms of, how is it, the subject is, areas of improvement suggested. It sounds like we're all agreeing that that's the areas of improvement. So maybe we need to, I think there's a couple statements in here, a suggested moment, for improvement in some of the paragraph. Maybe we need to rework that so it sounds more like some people thought that, in terms of agreeing on it. And as Mr. Walker said, it doesn't necessarily matter whether we agree or not, as long as it doesn't sound like we're saying things that we're not,
Ms. Bagwell-Jones.
I guess I appreciate, and I'm so sorry I missed that because I would have liked to have publicly said what I wrote, but, I wasn't here. And I think it's really important for everybody to feel very free to add their 2 bits, and, that's really important, and nobody is perfect, even though I do think Ms. Gormley comes very close to it. But I guess maybe because I'm coming from a perspective of working in different school districts, that things are really busy and things are really going fast, so I felt like I did get a timely response for questions that I had about things. I did feel like I got good execution. But I appreciate that you didn't, or other people didn't, but I didn't necessarily feel that way. So, and some of that might be because of the culture of a school system is, you're going. I don't know. I mean, that's just my perspective on it. So I guess I would phrase it more as, sharing of communication. We could get into it, but what I would get at another point is something like, timely sharing of information crucial to the operation of the schools is valid, and future goals include making sure that a tracking system is done, making sure that the communication is done. I don't know, some other way of saying it, because I don't have the same experience that you do, but I appreciate what you're saying, and I think that those should be goals. Ms. Gormley should have a tracking system of action plans. It's a great idea. She should have a system making sure she responds, checklist, okay, yep, we asked for this, yep, we got it. So I'd like to see it rephrased, and this is probably my social work part, as a positive strength to create the concern, but do it in a strength kind of way as a future goals. This is what you need to work on, one of the things that you need to work on. And then the last thing that I'll say is I think it's incredibly difficult to have a public evaluation, and I don't know any other job system that does it. I mean, you're our HR person. Does anybody else get a public evaluation that we know of?
Yeah.
Okay, I just think it's extremely excruciating.
It's different, but we're not the only entity that does it.
It's very, very difficult to have, so I want to applaud us. And I do think that, if I can just say one more thing and then I'll stop, is that, we want parents and residents to really trust us and to trust our educational leadership, and I think Ms. Gormley has worked really hard on that. And part of that trust is being able to say, hey, I want a little bit more on this. So I do appreciate where you're coming from on that. My perspective around the educational leadership is, I think I've said this before, somebody said to me we used to have a couple of things that we would work on that we weren't happy with related to the schools, and she used to watch the school committee meetings and Mary Gormley like a hawk. She said, I don't even watch anymore. I really should, but I trust Mary and John in their leadership. I guess I should watch, but, I really trust them, which I thought was a real strength. And the other one, in Milton Times, please don't take offense at this, the people who have said to me, I don't really read the Times anymore because I read the superintendent's blog. I just think that, sorry, not to be offensive, but I just think that Mary has really tried hard in her leadership team to really communicate, and I just so much appreciate that, because I haven't always had that experience. So I appreciate that very much. Sorry to talk so much.
Mr. Walker.
Just one more thing on that. While I was speaking about my experience in general, there were some things there where I was speaking on behalf of us as a group. When I asked for more clarity on the achievement gap strategy, that's not just me. I'm asking on behalf of the committee. And there were several points during the year where we had some good discussions. We had a discussion about health education. You had some ideas about changing that curriculum. They got lost. We never talked about it again. We talked about, when we talked about drug abuse and alcohol abuse, Ms. Padera had an idea about expanding the peer counseling program. Never talked about it again. There are certain things good ideas that come up during the course of our discussions that somebody's got to keep track of, and I think that's Mary's job. So, some of this is my own experience and my own perspective, but some of it is what's gone on at the committee level.
Can I just,
Yeah.
and then I don't want to go back and forth, but since the examples you gave were about the health education, we have followed up on some of those in the meetings, but I haven't brought you the minutes, because they have to be approved by the committee first, and we have a meeting this Friday, and the first thing on the agenda is superintendent's goals and plans around those specific categories. So the health committee is, with Mary's leadership, we're still continuing to work on those, but I have not brought them back to the school committee from the subcommittee. So Mary has done some follow-up, as have we. I appreciate that you want to hear more about that, but some of that does belong to the subcommittee, not just to Ms. Gormley.
It would be really helpful if we were able to say, at this meeting, this was an idea that was raised, here's
Yes,
what's
I
happened
agree.
since.
I agree.
Either we think it's still worth pursuing, we don't, let's cross it off the list, but
I agree.
Anyone else?
I mean, we could go on and on, in my opinion, discussing this and detailing areas and times when execution and follow-through are absolutely a strength and not a weakness, or, keeping track of ideas. The number of ideas that are generated at these meetings are tremendous, and I know that there's, a meeting, Glenn and I attend a meeting, a follow-up meeting after a school committee meeting, and we go through a list of to-do list, and so, I mean, we could keep debating this, but I guess my question really is to you, Glenn, what is the next step with this?
My feeling on this is if people, the worst thing we can do is sit here and try to wordsmith something. It's just the absolutely worst thing on earth. But Mr. Walker has drafted something. Kristen seems to indicate she might possibly have a draft of some language, because if we could put what you just said into words, and if other people have suggestions on you have both drafts, how to incorporate it. If you could get this to me in the next couple of days, I will try my best to incorporate it into one document that gets the flavor of everybody's input, and I'll bring it back next week.
Could I see what Mr. Walker wrote? I know I have it at home. You know that paragraph that you
Yep.
read? Can I write on that?
It's my copy, but yes, I have it at home too.
Thanks.
I sense someone doesn't want to bring it home. Bring it home and work on it. All right, so with the committee's approval, we will table this until next Wednesday's meeting. If you'll give me your thoughts and responses in the meantime, I will put something together and get it out to you. Well, assuming you get it to me, I will get it out to you a couple days in advance of the meeting, and so you'll have a chance to look it over. That would bring us to the Proficiency Gap Task Force update. Mr. Fallon.
Included in your packets are two memos that I have submitted to Superintendent Gormley dated November 20th, 2012. One outlines the three committees that have been established in the Milton Public Schools per the superintendent's directive. One on the STEM initiative that has began this year and will bring more guidance to what STEM will look like K to 12. The goal of that committee would be to provide a scope and sequence and a pathway of STEM programmatic offerings to students K to 12 that is linked to the new science frameworks. Co-chairing that committee are Drew Eccleston, principal at the Glover School, Dr. Karen Spalding, principal of the Pierce Middle School, and Marilyn Decker, our K to 12 science director. The second committee that we have commissioned is the Technology Committee. The goal of this committee is to provide a short and long-term plan for educational use of technology in our classrooms by teachers and students. This is the educational side of the technology work that we will be pursuing, as opposed to the infrastructure side that we've already talked about at this table and have pursued funding for through our capital committee and other donors in the town that we feel we have the ability to get some funding for. Heading up that or co-chairing that committee are John Redden, our Cunningham principal, Holly Concannon, our math and technology director, coordinator at the elementary level, Amy Gale, Assistant Principal and Humanities Coordinator at the middle school, and Michelle Cruiser, Assistant Principal at Milton High School. Lastly, the Proficiency Gap Task Force has been put together as well. The goal of this group, and there's another memo outlining the steps that that group will take that I will speak to in one moment. The goal of that group is to define and investigate the issue of proficiency gap as it relates to the Milton Public School student data, curriculum, teaching strategies, and programmatic offerings. Marcia Uretsky, Principal of Tucker, Life Lagueros, our Assistant Principal and Math Coordinator at the middle school, Courtney Walsh, Math Department and Technology Chair at the high school, Drew Eccleston, Principal of Glover School, and I, John Phelan, will also be chairing that. So those are the three committees that we have that have been working, already met, and are in progress. Specifically to the work of the Proficiency Gap Task Force, we have submitted this memo to Superintendent Gormley outlining the goal of the group and the objectives of the group. We have already met twice. We have the third meeting on Friday of this week. The goal of the group is to examine and report out to the superintendent regarding the proficiency gap or gaps in the Milton Public Schools. The objectives will be to identify every individual student in the Milton Public School at each level who is in the failing or needs improvement category in one or more MCAS subjects via the 2012 testing. We will look to analyze that data of non-proficiency students to clarify and identify any trends in student demographic groups by level, by grade level, and/or by content area. The third will be to examine this list of students with each building principal to review and analyze the interventions in place for each student. The fourth will be to conduct a review of the current targeted interventions at the building and district level for effectiveness. The fifth will be to solicit teacher representation on the task force from each level of the district. Sixth will be to review the current research literature and best practices for narrowing the proficiency gap. And last will be to make recommendations to the superintendent on the district and building-based initiatives that would narrow the achievement gap for those students identified as not proficient in the Milton Public Schools. So we look forward to doing this work. Again, our third meeting is Friday. We have already amassed a spreadsheet of data of every single student who has not met with proficiency in the Milton Public Schools. We have, that spreadsheet goes across by about 20 columns of specific data about each student in their progress, in their demographics, and the interventions that we hope we have in place for them and hope to have in place for them. And we will be analyzing that Friday and calling a meeting of every building principal before the holiday break. So we look forward to doing this work, reporting out on the data, and reporting out to the superintendent and to this body as well.
Questions for Mr. Phelan? Mr. Walker?
Mr. Phelan, when do you expect that these 7 objectives will be completed and that we can start the necessary interventions with students?
I would think that I think that there are already interventions happening with students. We're evaluating some of the effectiveness of those interventions per, I believe, the conversation at this table. I think that there are interventions in place in each school. What we want to do is we want to look at each one of them to see if they are effective and if they're working for the students that they serve. So I would say, in terms of a timeline, that this group would have, the data is set in hand for Friday. We will meet with the principals before the holiday break. In January, we'll solicit, or maybe late December, solicit staff to review literature, and we can come up with recommendations for the superintendent, I'd say by early February. I guess I don't want to say that does not mean that there are not initiatives at this point in time, some of which were communicated at this last school committee meeting, of all the different interventions that are in place at each school at this point in time.
Mr. Walker?
Following. But if there's anyone else. One thing you said concerned me, which is we're going to look at the interventions currently in place to see whether they're working. We would have to assume from the data that they're not working as well as we would like, thus the proficiency gap. And we talked a little about this last time, but I'm hoping for a different approach that we think can be more effective. One thing that the superintendent mentioned when we talked about this offline that I was excited about, but I don't see here, is that we would develop a plan of action for each individual student. That, I don't see that here, but maybe that'll be in the recommendations that come from objective number 7. But I think that the task here, and I'm a little concerned that I hope we won't lose this entire academic year. But I think we need to do this, whatever additional analysis we need to do. I mean, we have some data. We know we know who these students are for the most part. And I hope that we wouldn't spend a lot of time, as I said, looking at what we've already done, because we've got data on the effectiveness of what we've already done. So I see this as the challenge is, what do we need to do differently and more creatively, more innovatively, and how do we get that into place quickly?
If I might.
Yes.
When we have the data and what the different interventions are for each child on the list 3, when we look at each child and sit down with each principal, what we're going to do on a monthly basis is to review the children in each school. What are the interventions? What's been put in place for these children? When we have the Saturday program, are these children enrolled in the Saturday program? Who's made sure, personally contacted with their family? So we're all sitting down, whether it's homework club, are these children watching are we watching the attendance in homework club, the instruction during the school day? So we're going to examine every single child, and so to make sure that every single student is being offered every one of the supports and approaches that we have within the Milton Public School to close those proficiency gaps. And so I've analogized it to special education. In special education, when you come up with an individual plan, that's like a contract with the family, with the child. And so we know how to do this work. We know how to raise achievement. And the way that I want to approach this is that we look at every single child and we analyze and we watch the progress and we take responsibility for every single child's proficiency. So any child who has failed, who hasn't made proficiency, or any child who's at risk of failing, again, so that we, to Mr. Phelan's point, sitting down with the principals and the experienced educators in each school, what are the practices that we can put in place that will, again, eliminate those proficiency gaps and bring about a success for every child.
Could I comment too?
What else?
Can I just respond to the question too? I think that the purpose of the evaluation process is to find out that some things I believe are working for some students, and I think a differentiated approach to how we work towards a success plan for students at different grade levels with different issues or different concerns is the most important part. So I wouldn't want to throw out the baby with the bathwater. If we have 20 initiatives or 15 initiatives in the Milton Public Schools right now between Saturday programs, after-school help, mentoring, MCAS reinforcement classes, Saturday classes, some of those work for some students. So our goal was to find out which ones are working for which students are not meeting with success with the current initiatives, and what additional more creative ones we can put in place. So I would reserve the right to say that there are interventions ongoing in the Milton Public Schools that would be worthwhile in continuing, in others that would be looked at in more creative ways. And I would do that by student outcome. What are students doing, and what are the interventions they have in place, and why aren't they achieving? Because I think that I hope the data finds, and I think the data will find, that there are students who, given those interventions in place currently, are making strides in a positive direction. So analyzing those current interventions and looking at what works and what doesn't, I think, is a big piece of what the work will be. And the reason why we called it a task force and not a committee is because we want to shrink the timeline, because there is an urgency to put interventions in place this year, if possible, that are new and different.
Ms. Padera.
Yeah, I was basically going to just say the same thing. There might be things that are working for some students but not others, but simply because of access, or we're just not reaching them in the right way. And so budgetarily, we can still offer different solutions. And I think it's a great idea to have a task force to really think outside the box that the students we're not reaching, not getting services to properly. We need to find a way to get access to what works for them. Because one way or the other, we have to find a way to reach them and give them the services that are going to work for them. So I would agree with that wholeheartedly.
Ms. Bagley Jones.
I do have a couple of sort of questions on Mr. Walker's point, so we'll have them written down so we can get answers, because there is a lot of information that we're looking at. But I do have, so there's some are comments and some are questions, but one is, what districts of Massachusetts have successfully addressed this issue? And I don't mean large districts, I just mean who else out there has done some creative stuff around this? Because it's got to be some creative stuff. And I know I think we've done a really good job, but if we have one kid who isn't making it, then we have one kid who isn't making it. So what's been out there, and I'm not trying to make more work for you guys, but Mary, in terms of like your other superintendents that you know, in terms of groups you belong to, who's doing what that's working to address the achievement gaps? I'd be really curious about. Can I just keep going? Is that? I know you don't want to have a lot of other members on these committees because we want to move, but the glaring group that's missing on all three are parents. I know this is a task force, but part of best practices around achievement gaps is involvement of parents. So what's the plan for how we're involving parents? Maybe they're not on the task force, but maybe that's something that the task force addresses and says we need to have parent input. Parents know their kids best. And also that is what the research out there says, is parent involvement. And like, I was surprised that not all of the kids in Milton have a library card. I don't know. Like, that's an initiative right there. Every single first grader will get a library card. The literacy push in the younger grades, I know we're talking a lot about specific kids, but what are we doing around a really big literacy push in grade 1, grade 2? That's really important to me. I'm sorry, I just have to keep going. I just have a bunch of questions. The STEM invite, which we're going to talk about, which is the STEM program in Pierce, is targeted to kids who have reached a certain score on the MCAS. I wasn't here for that discussion, but I would have said, gee, there's some kids who aren't doing well in math and really want the hands-on stuff, but they didn't do well in math, so guess you miss out on this in the Pierce school. So I'd really like to look at that in terms of differentiated instruction, different learning styles. Not all kids learn the same way. I know in my own family, my kids learn differently. So what are we doing to provide for those kids around differentiated instruction, and how are we going to apply STEM to differentiated instruction? The class size, are we tracking class size that's connected to scores? Who talked about it earlier? Somebody said something about comparing the kids in each class to each other. Well, do we have a class one year that has a larger than expected class size? And what's their data look like? I mean, these are just sort of general ideas. I'm not expecting a question or an answer on each one of them. And then comparing the kids who had growth versus the kids who aren't achieving. If a kid had 30% growth, what did we do that was successful for that kid? Which is what you said as well. The Saturday program works for some kids. It doesn't work for all kids. I have people who have said to me, my kid was invited to the Saturday program. I was really insulted. My kid hates school already. I'm not making him go to school the 6th day. Okay, I see that point. So does the Saturday or the summer programs or those things, do they work for some kids? Great, but they don't work for all kids, especially kids who have learning challenges that may not meet special education qualifications, but they don't like school. What are we doing to help them? Anyway, so I think that's all that I have to say on that, but just sort of some general thoughts, and then I do have specific things, and I do think parents are missing from these three committees, even if they're just invited at a later point. We had 2 parents approach us about the STEM initiative saying, I have a little experience with it, I'd be really interested in helping get it off the ground. Okay, let's get them invited to, let's get them involved somehow.
Ms. Padera?
So I just wanted to say, I'm very excited about the, in addition, the STEM task force. And as I was talking to both of you today during our tour, I told you why. On the news last night, there was we're not the only ones dealing with how to get kids to do better in science and excited about science. There was a talk, New Hampshire had a study about they're losing 60% of their kids are starting out as science majors. 60% of the kids that start off with science majors change and come out of science. And there's a very shrinking career force in there of people that were very inspired scientists, and they're going to be retiring soon, and there's nobody to fill those jobs. So there's great opportunities there. But as they polled students, they found that they didn't find science as relevant, and they found it boring. So they're looking at ways of increasing that and keeping kids in science. And one of the things is to find it inspiring. And a lot of these people that grew up to be scientists were inspired when they were very young by events that happened in their lives. Perhaps it was Apollo landing on the moon. And that's a lot of my friends that when I worked at MIT talked about. So we have a lot of inspiring events that go on, and we really need to, number one, get kids inspired early, which starting the STEM program this year, I think it will do a lot to help with that, but also keep them interested in showing them all the opportunities that are available in science and technology and keeping them there. So I think as committee members, Kristen Bagley-Jones talked about the pilot program. We did talk about that on the last school committee meeting, and I think all of us shared, like, we wish we could open that up to everybody, but it is a pilot program. We want to start something and build on that, build on the excitement of it, and I think it's a great initiative to get things started. And also having a task force to look at this science program problem and why our kids aren't staying with science, doing well in science, and continuing to do well in science in the AP programs as well. We have to tackle that problem because there's so many opportunities for students that if they don't take advantage of them early, I don't know if they will. So that's how I feel about it.
Sure.
I had a more technical question at this point. A lot's been already covered already, but just, you have outlined in the Proficiency Gap Task Force how people will be added, but to the STEM and technology committees, are there going to be other people that will be added to these committees as well?
STEM and technology committees have already sent out requests for teachers at every grade level to participate on the committee. So I believe that the committee for STEM, in terms of teachers at every level, have already been solicited. And today, Principal Redding put out the request for staff to participate on the technology committee. We do plan on contacting the parents who were involved in the STEM committee dialogue initially, and we already have had meetings with committee members, Milton Foundation, Curry College, Milton Academy, and other vendors and resources about the technology committee as well. So if the committee would like, we could gladly have parents serve either on the committees or at different times be involved with the committees, and I think that they have, but we will absolutely make that happen.
And just one final question. So are these meetings happening after school?
It's a little bit of both.
I'd be interested in the technology committee if you're looking for, but I could only do after school.
Anything else on this from the committee? Well, thank you, Mr. Phelan. We had put off item G, the superintendent's goals. We have other on there. I have no other myself. So we will move on to the Finance Subcommittee report on the full-day kindergarten grant update. And I assume, Mr. Walker, you're doing that, or in Ms. Kelly's absence?
Well, until 2 seconds ago, I didn't know I was doing that, but the superintendent asked Ms. Rose Marin to join us for one of our recent Finance Committee meetings, and in short, she suggested that the state may be changing its guidelines for the grants such that the grants target as a priority districts with a higher percentage of low-income students. and therefore, that puts Milton's grant, we think, at risk. They still haven't issued the regulations that confirm this different approach, but Ms. Rosmarin thinks that probably over the next 4 to 6 weeks, we will probably have a more definitive answer. So we thought that we should certainly update the committee, and we're also going to see if we can mobilize the PTOs and talk about a strategy for perhaps at least making our position clear, which is that this grant gives a significant benefit to our community, even if we don't have the highest percentage of low-income students, but there's still a great benefit to the full-day kindergarten program, and the removal of that grant would have an impact, quite simply, that would have an impact on the tuitions we would have to charge. So we're concerned about this and we're monitoring it, but we wanted to make sure all of you were aware as well.
Yes, Mr.
So just to clarify, are you saying that they said that this grant may go away totally, or?
Well, yes. If you look at the guidelines, we would have difficulty qualifying. The revised
Mr.
guidelines.
Gillis.
So the impact if we lost all the grant money would be approximately $700 to $800 increase on the tuition for the students coming in next year, because unless we decided to do something with it in the budget, but we haven't been planning that up until this point in time anyway.
Ms. Bagley Jones.
So what do parents pay now for their share of full-day K?
Right now, the full tuition is $3,550. If it happened today, it would be another $700 we would add on to the tuition. So it's probably going to be between $700 and $800 for next year.
Okay, so the total would be
It would be $4,300.
$4,300. So, and do we know when we would know by for parents to know that? Because that's a lot of money, but it's also, private K is much more than that, right?
Like Mr. Walker said, the state should be letting us know in the next few weeks. They're promulgating the regs. The funding from the state as a whole supposedly hasn't gone away. They're just choosing to reallocate it differently to lower income communities and communities with lower MCAS scores, two hurdles of which that we're going to have a hard time competing against a lot of the other communities that would be going for the same type of grant.
You might remember last year that Ms. Rosmarin came to this table when there were discussions about reallocating the full-day kindergarten grant funding. And so we felt, Ms. Rosmarin came to Finance Subcommittee, that we had a responsibility to communicate to the Finance Subcommittee, the school committee, and the public that the chance that that grant might not be there next year. Full-day kindergarten is hugely successful in this community. We have it's not like the free and reduced lunch scale, but there is an assistance plan put out by DESE, and in the Milton Public Schools, all but 4 children are enrolled in full-day kindergarten. I think that's a testimony to this town, to the successfulness of our full-day kindergarten. Milton Public School parents vote with their feet, and so this full-day kindergarten program in Milton is hugely successful. It's driving student achievement, and this would have, even comparing it to private full-day kindergartens, I believe it would have an impact on the enrollment and the opportunities for the children who are enrolled in the program. So we wanted to, again, to Mr. Walker's point, we'll keep you informed. We have meetings set up with Ms. Rosmarin, and Mr. Walker's going to come to our PTO president's meeting and to start to talk to that group and get them informed to inform the parents.
Ms. Bailey-Johnson.
I think it's always a fine line between the wolf is at the door and don't worry, there's no problem. And maybe one of the ways to do it is to really marry in your very successful blog and other opportunities to say, hey, folks, this is the reality, and we hope we can still keep doing this, but every year, so please plan your budgets accordingly. We hope it's going to remain at $3,550, or whatever it is, but it may not, because parents have to plan, and then they'll say, well, I didn't know about this. Well, unless they're watching right now tonight, maybe they wouldn't. So how can we really publicize that as parents are making their plans?
This was our first.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think we have an obligation to do two things. That's one of them, that certainly let parents know that this is a distinct possibility at this point and what the impact would be. But I'm also suggesting that we weigh in before this decision gets made to let Department of Education, the governor, know what the impact would be and what the benefits are to this community.
We do have some meetings coming up with people from DESE and some local representatives, so. Ms. Padera.
I just have a quick question. So, Mr. Gillis, you said that it would add about $700 to $800 to, is that the person that's paying the full bill, or is that everyone?
No, that would be the person that's paying the full bill.
But everybody's bill might go up a little bit, you know what I mean? Or is it
Everybody
would-
that's, doesn't qualify for tuition waivers, bill would
Go
also
up.
go up, yes.
So we'd still be able to give assistance to those people that wouldn't pay that full amount, you know what I'm saying?
Yes, we would still have that option.
Okay.
With the grant, we're required to use the state scale. If we don't have the grant, we could create our own scale.
Okay, but we'd still offer that. And just one.
Sure.
So, yeah, I would agree, the PTOs are a great resource to give a little heads up to, and I think a lot of them might be meeting one more time in December, so it might be, if that decision's being made soon, we might want to get to them ASAP with instructions on who to contact.
Sure.
Would it be helpful for us as a committee to send a letter to the DESE and the governor or whomever, or?
Yeah, I don't think that hurts, but I think they need to hear from the actual customers. But I think we should.
Anything else for the committee? Okay. So we move on to policy subcommittee reports. Who is doing that?
I think we'll be able to move pretty quickly through this. The first policy, BAA, is entitled Evaluation of School Committee Operational Procedures. And although this says the school committee will periodically establish objectives related to committee procedures and relationships, we feel that these are things that we do on a regular basis, and all of those items that are delineated aren't covered necessarily by policy. They're things that we could do without. And so we feel that this isn't really necessary. And unless there's any discussion, our recommendation is to eliminate this policy from our book of policies.
So we would have 299 policies instead of 300.
I'm sorry, which one was it?
BAA,
The top one.
called Evaluation of School Operational Procedures. So I take that as a motion by Ms.
Second.
And seconded by Mr. Walker to eliminate policy BAA. Is there any discussion on that? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor? That is unanimous. Next.
And I think we can take policies labeled B through F together as one. We are just reapproving these. As you know, we are supposed to reapprove our policies every few years, and we are in arrears of this and doing the best we can to wade through the book, but it's quite a task. And there were no changes made to any of these policies dealing with school committee legal status and authority, school committee membership and term of office, school committee member resignation vacancies or extended absences, school committee member ethics, and school committee organizational meeting.
So that's a motion to reapprove policies BB, triple B, the one labeled triple BC / triple BE, BCA and BDA.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Walker. Any discussion on that? Yes, Ms. Bagley
Can I just
Jones.
ask a question on BCA, school committee member ethics? It says the code of ethics, one, community responsibility.
Where are you, I'm sorry?
Second paragraph, service entails ethical obligations above and beyond the laws, and then it says number one is community responsibility. I guess I'm just wondering if something happens to someone, a school committee member, if something, bad happens, they're not obligated to resign. So, what, somebody gets arrested for something tomorrow. They don't have to, or, I don't know, another example, they don't have to resign. And I guess I'm just raising it to say, if somebody acts in a matter that's unethical,
Well,
I'm asking for clarification, like, what
no,
does that
it
mean?
does not say that somebody has to resign. I don't know that legally we could, as elected officials, say that another elected official has to resign under certain circumstances. I think there's, it's one of those areas where, the purpose of an ethics policy is to lay out the expectation, but they have no force of law. I mean, people can elect whom they will, and removing an elected official is saying that if X, Y, and Z happens as an elected official, you have to step down. I'm not sure would stand up to a legal challenge.
So just, my interpretation of that was that this was saying these are areas of responsibility, and we're responsible to the community because the community elects us, and we're responsible to the school administration because we work with them, and we're responsible to each other. So I guess I just looked at that through a different lens than you, Kristen. I don't know if that helps.
Yeah, no, and I think all of these make total sense. I was just wanting to raise, is there a need to add something else? And I understand Glenn's point about somebody's elected, it's, what's that thing that says conduct unbecoming? I don't know. I just, that's an officer.
That's in the military.
This is the.
You might have noticed that of late.
Yeah. So, anyway, so I guess I'm just raising it to say, I see that, these are all really good, and it makes a lot of sense, but sometimes it would be nice to have a clearer picture of really what, anyway.
I think
I can't
that's
think of a
outside,
solution.
I think that that's outside the realm of the policy.
Yep, I can live with that.
All right, so the motion on the floor is to reapprove those 5 policies. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? That is unanimous. Next.
So the next policy is CBI, it's the evaluation of the superintendent, and this needed to be adapted or changed based on the fact that we have a change of how we evaluate our superintendent. We're now going to move towards a new evaluation system, aligned with what the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education has presented to us. And so this policy that you have before you was drafted by Steve Finnegan, who is a Milton resident, but also the chief counsel for Mass Association of School Committees. And so we took his draft and worked with it briefly, but we tried to make it as succinct as possible in aligning with the new model evaluation process for superintendents.
So this is submitted to you as a first reading. We don't take a vote on it. This is for your consideration. Get back to the subcommittee with any questions or concerns you might have.
And finally, we have, again, a new policy, JGA. It's grade 1 assignment, and I'm going to read this because it is new. And again, it's a first reading, so we will not vote on it. It says, "The assignment of students to grade 1 will always be carried out in a manner that provides optimal learning environments for all students. Grade 1 assignment procedures. Kindergarten students who attend the Milton Public Schools as of March 1st will be included in this process. Each year, the district will provide families with information regarding the elementary programs. The district will provide this information in various formats as determined by the superintendent. Each year, the superintendent will, 1, determine the level of interest in the grade 1 English and French programs, 2, accommodate and assign all students to grade 1 English who select English, 3, determine the number of grade 1 English and French immersion sections in each school based on the established format. And here's the delineation. Collicott has a minimum of 2 English and a maximum of 2 French. Cunningham has a minimum of 2 English and a maximum of 1 French. Glover has a minimum of 2 English with a maximum of 2 French. Tucker has a minimum of 2 English and a maximum of 1 French. But the asterisk with each one of those is that if enrollment numbers require that an additional grade 1 section is needed, the superintendent will determine whether that section will be English or French, and in which school the section will be located based on the needs of the district. So just an aside from this, what I'm saying now isn't written in the policy, but this year we have had to add an additional kindergarten class because enrollment numbers were so high. So this is an example of when an additional first grade class will be added. Back to the policy. Number 4, in the event that the demand for French immersion exceeds the number of available seats, school-based lotteries for French immersion seats will be held. Multiples, such as twins and triplets, etc., will enter the lottery as a single entry. Priority for school assignment will remain in effect for siblings. However, siblings will not have priority in the school-based lotteries for program assignment. So the first reading is tonight. The second reading would be at our next meeting, with approval following that.
Okay, again, so any comments, please get them back to the subcommittee.
Thank you.
Prior to next week's meeting. That takes care of policy subcommittee. Any old business? Citizen speak, topic response from prior citizen speaks. Citizens speak, whatever plural of that is. Next meeting agenda items. We've pushed a couple items off from tonight, so those will be on the next agenda.
We will have additional policy items to share that will be on the agenda. And also, would it be possible to have the football team come and bring their trophy? I think that would be fun.
Well, and the music and chorus students that got the statewide recognition.
You will have help from there too? Okay.
And the Collicott Site Council is prepared to come.
Okay. Have anyone for a second session of Citizen Speak? I don't see anyone. We put off our executive session, so at that point, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Thank you, and good evening.